Welcome to the Probate Nation. My name is Richard Ruddy. Whether you are handling the finances for an elderly loved one as a court-appointed conservator or an agent under a power of attorney, your primary goal is to manage their financial affairs in a prudent manner so that you have the necessary resources to care for them while they are living. In the course of this responsibility, you may determine there is a current income or potential estate tax liability, or you may find that tax liability was previously identified and tax planning has been initiated. In both instances, gifts to charity are a common tax-saving tool that you may need to consider or deal with while also allowing your loved one to support a charity dear to them. It is good to know that charities have experienced professionals who can help you with that planning or with the implementation of an existing plan. Working with them will minimize problems so that all goes smoothly, meets the gifting goals of your loved one, and allows the charity to honor your loved one while living for her generous support. We are pleased to have as our guests tonight two development professionals who will share with us how they work with prospective donors as well as conservators and agents under powers of attorney, as well as with executors who administer the estate of a donor once they pass away, to implement a host of gifting strategies. Our first guest is a certified fundraising executive with over 15 years of fundraising experience. Since 2015, she has worked for the Salvation Army and presently serves as its Divisional Director of Planned Giving for the National Capital and Virginia Division. She's also active in the industry as a member of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, the National Capital Gift Planning Council, and the Chesapeake Planned Gift Giving Council. She served as president of the Chesapeake Giving Council from 2012 to 2015. Our second guest is the acting executive director of gift planning at the University of Maryland. She has over 20 years of development experience, of which 13 has been in gift planning. She is also a member of the National Association of Charitable Gift Planners and the National Capital Gift Planning Council. She served as president of the National Capital Gift Planning Council from 2016 to 2018 and will be awarded the Council's Distinguished Service Award in May of this year. Please welcome our guests, Jenny Stitley and Patty Wang. Wow, you guys are super talented.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all this great experience you have. Well, Patty, let's just get started with the whole concept of charitable giving. Tell us a little bit about how someone can determine the charitable status of an organization they might want to give a gift to.
Sure. Richard, the easiest and most efficient way is for anyone who's interested to verify with the organization that it is a 501c3 organization. This is a status that is granted by the IRS and something that can be looked up very easily through different resources, such as the Charity Navigator, or other online resources.
Sure. See, we talked about a bunch of those things that you can do. Online is a great tool these days to figure that out.
Yes.
And of course, charities actually get a letter from the IRS at some point that actually gives their exempt status determination too.
That's correct.
That they can share. Now, Jenny, are all gifts tax deductible though, even though the organization might be a tax exempt organization?
So typically your gifts are going to be tax deductible if you are giving to a 501c3. What can vary is the amount of that tax deductibility. So that is really determined by the nature of the gift itself.
Okay. We don't want to get down into the trenches about tax issues like that, but yes, I think it's important to know.
Exactly.
It doesn't necessarily go away. It just might be you can't deduct it all at one time.
Correct.
So that's
Correct.
important to know as well. Well, Patty, let's talk about some gifting considerations. Now, when someone approaches an organization like yours and wants to make a gift, either while they're living or maybe it's a gift that's been planned and it's coming at death, who do they typically deal with?
It would ordinarily be a development professional in that organization.
Okay.
And that person could have a title, for example, Director of Development or Director of Philanthropic Giving.
Okay, so at least they know they're dealing with the right person.
Yes.
Is there normally more than one development officer with a charity, or is it generally usually one person that's been designated for that role?
It really depends on the size of the organization.
Okay.
For smaller organizations, it might be a sole person or a very small team, all the way to a very large organization like the Salvation Army, which would probably have hundreds of staff and teams.
But nobody's as good as Jenny, though.
Right.
Well, Patty, what are some of the key considerations or questions that fundraisers typically raise with them?
Well, it's very important to have a very impactful gift, and so we get to the gist of that by having a conversation with the donor about what his or her passions are, what they care about, and to really talk about what kind of impact he or she wants to have on the organization's mission. And then after we get through that, we then talk about the gift structure.
So when someone comes in and they have $25,000 to make a gift, to give, and they want to give $1,000 to 25 organizations, that's what you're really getting at. How much of an impact will $1,000 make, or could they have a larger impact with making 25,000 to just one organization?
Yes.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, Jenny, what should a donor or a conservator or agent, using a power of attorney, expect from a development officer when they approach them?
They should see us as a part of the planning team and as a valuable resource. So when we're working with our donors, we want to make sure that they are looking to us for advice, not just on what gift to make, but how to make the best gift possible, and how to make a gift that is fair and accomplishes all of their goals, not only for the organization, but also for their family.
Okay.
So, we're really talking to them, again, as Patty said, about the impact that they want to have on the organization, what is near and dear to them, how to do it in the best manner possible, and how to do it in a way that benefits everybody, not only the donor, but the donor's family, if possible, and also the organization itself.
Okay. So there's a lot to consider.
Very much so.
And a lot of times people don't really realize all those considerations. It may actually open up some ideas and windows of thought.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are the experts on the charitable side. So sometimes we have ideas that we can bring to the table that the donor's not considered before, and we like very much when we can work with the donor themselves and also as part of a larger team working with the professional advisors.
Okay, good. So so you may have covered this, but what are some of the advantages that the donors get from working with the charity during their lifetime?
The biggest advantage is it gives the charity the opportunity to validate that what we're hearing from the donor is in fact what they want. So we can validate during their lifetime that the gift is structured how they want it and that it's going to be used in the way they most want it to be used. So that we are helping them to achieve their goals, their philanthropic wishes. That is first and foremost of importance to us as the staff for the organization in a very donor-centric environment.
Okay. Okay. So, that's very helpful.
Thank you.
So now, how about us talk both of you? I'll each of you to contribute to this. Charitable gifting strategy. Let's review some of the basic forms people can make charitable gifts. So, Patty, you want to start?
Sure. I think what people are most familiar with is either writing a check, giving cash, using appreciated securities. If we start looking at other available assets, we can be considering retirement assets such as an IRA or life insurance policies. And then we get down to the more sophisticated vehicles that require the use of a professional, which are trusts and annuities. And as we know, most of those vehicles will provide an income source for a limited time during the donor's lifetime.
So that's one thing to bring out, that is a strategy where even if they're either the donor or otherwise a conservator or a power of attorney agent could come and make arrangements to arrange for a gift that involves creating an annuity stream for income.
Yes.
Again, we'll talk about some of those complications when we're dealing with someone other than the donor. But Jenny, you want to add anything about the simplest things? How about any particular?
In terms of what we see most commonly, I would agree with Patty. Typically, you've got donors that are making cash gifts. And then from our perspective in being on the charitable planning side, what we see most frequently would be gifts through a bequest or a will, or beneficiary designation, so naming somebody as, or naming an organization, forgive me, as a beneficiary of an account, an IRA, a checking account. Here in the DC metro area, thrift savings plan, we have a lot of government workers.
Sure.
So those are things that we see most commonly, mostly because they are the most easy to facilitate.
Now, and then Patty, you were starting to talk about the more complicated strategies are these annuities.
Yes.
And those involve transfers of money to the organization in exchange for either an income stream while they're living, or an income stream to the charity, and then it goes back to the donor. Is that the thing we're talking about?
Yes, exactly. And the appropriateness of using those types of vehicles all depend, again, like Jenny had said, on what the donor's philanthropic and financial goals are in relation to his or her estate planning. And that really should be done with the help of a financial professional.
That definitely, as you start to get into those more complicated areas, a team approach is very helpful, so we don't do something that might not be appropriate.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, let's talk about Jenny, let's talk about some of the common gift problems that you run into. What are some of the things you most encounter that you go, oh, shoot, if we only knew?
Well, the biggest one is if I'd only known, is when the donor actually doesn't share with us what their plans are, and ultimately that can lead to problems after the donor passes away. Perhaps the gift isn't used in the manner that the donor would have preferred. Mm-hmm. Another critical piece to that is we never got to thank them. You know, as an organization, we really want to say thank you to the people that support us and to let them know how critical their gift is to the ongoing success of the organization.
Sure.
So I would say those are two of the top items that are most important and can really lead to a downfall if they are not properly executed.
Okay, so and I guess one of those things is actually making sure then from their perspective, making sure that we have the correct name of the charity.
Absolutely,
and stuff like
getting
that.
all of those details right. You know, are you giving it to the right organization? I know, you know, in the case of both the Army and the University of Maryland, we're complicated organizations, so you want to make sure that your gift is going to the right area, and also making sure that you have all of those details correct.
Well, Patty, are there situations in which charities actually refuse to accept a gift? And
There will be some instances where a donor has stated a purpose in his or his legal documentation where it's really not feasible because of the organization's mission, for example.
Okay.
So the other important pieces are that we're not mind readers, and so it's important during life that we have opportunities to discuss the gift purpose, and the gift use with the donor, and ideally that will lead to the perfect gift after the donor's life.
That certainly makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Well, let's talk about, let's continue on some of the challenges that you face, though, in administering estates where the gifts are being made. So, what kind of problems do you run into with beneficiary designations in the course of administering an estate where they try to leave stuff to a charity?
Yes. The beneficiary designation is extremely important when we're settling an estate. The legal documentation is very clear. It must be followed to the letter. We cannot really make many changes, and I think one of the pitfalls is that the executors often misunderstand the role that he or she is playing, and instead of carrying out the wishes of the will or the living trust, they often will try to contribute to the gift purpose, which is really not possible.
Well, that's not, you can't do that.
Yes, exactly.
Well, unless there's instructions to that effect.
Yes.
Where they're allowed to sprinkle it among a certain number of charities. We see some of that occasionally.
Yes.
So problems with the wills and living trusts, we can't change the designations in those documents. Certainly on the life insurance policies and the payable on death designations, transfer on designations, those are fixed.
Yes.
So we want to make sure, again, this is another example where there needs to be communication in the beginning when this is being set up, because this is not a lifetime gift anyway, it's testamentary.
Yes.
Make sure those things all those dots are connected. Well, that kind of leads us to, what who many of our audience are, which are fiduciaries. Okay, so then let's talk about, existing gift plan and donor has previously made arrangements for a gift for a charity during their lifetime. Talk a little bit about how you work with those types of fiduciaries. Once the document's already been set up and the person's otherwise
Right.
fine, and now maybe they're incapacitated.
So typically when we're working with a fiduciary, it's in exactly that situation where the donor is no longer able to manage their finances on their own. So we are typically working through a power of attorney just to make sure that in the case of an annuity or a trust that payments are still being received, that they're still deposited. Believe it or not, that can be problematic. And we want to make sure we're fulfilling our end of the agreement. So we're really maintaining the relationship with the donor through the power of attorney to ensure that both ends of the agreement are fulfilled.
Okay. Now, and of course, that deals with conservators
Sure.
as well who might take over. Now, what about if someone doesn't have a gifting plan already set up, either in just a lifetime gifting plan, or maybe they don't have the state documents they want yet, and they want to make changes. How will you work with somebody who approaches you who wants to create a plan for their principal or the donor who may be who's now incapacitated?
So typically we would not be working with somebody at that point. So within our own organizations, the structure really focuses on us working with the donor while they are in full capacity to be able to make those gifting decisions. It gets infinitely more difficult when we get to a scenario where the donor is incapacitated and we're now working with a conservator. That just brings up a whole host of legal concerns on the organization, the charitable organization side, because we want to avoid factors such as undue influence and things of that nature. So we would tread with caution in a scenario like that. I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but it is not probable that we would entertain that type of discussion.
Well, certainly in Virginia, undue influence is an issue, and obviously, if you were, arranging for gifts to your organization, that sort of treads on a path that creates certain issues. But as we talked about in preparing for this show, a lot of people do need to make plans. Sometimes they didn't make those plans, and there are ways in which attorneys can go to court and get permission to do certain things, and with the appropriate court orders as a conservator or an agent under a power of attorney, or even to restructure, revocable trust plans. If you have a court order, is that something that would be more favorably received? I'm not saying it's dispositive, but would it be more favorably received in order to make a plan?
I would say it would be a necessity for us to move forward. And
Sure.
there again, at that point, it would likely move out of our areas and into our legal departments.
Of course.
As to how to proceed in the best manner possible for both parties.
Yeah, I could certainly see whatever plan was developed, maybe bringing that back to court and getting that blessed again.
Definitely.
In order to make sure that we have all that buttoned down, so nobody could make any sort of accusations down the road.
Correct.
That's a good idea. Have you had similar experiences at University of Maryland dealing with people who are incapacitated and try to come in and their agents or family now want to make gifts?
Yes, we've had similar experience to the Salvation Army and would generally follow similar paths in order to be able to receive the funds, but to do it in a legal and ethical manner.
Of course, of course. Well, I can see by the clock we're moving along here. You guys field a lot of charitable bequests and arrange for a lot of giving, for many years, and all different types of gifts, I'm sure. Tell me a little bit about, just share with us some final thoughts about charitable gifting for donors, things you would advise the donors or their advisors about things that they should do or not do, and what to expect as some final comments for us. Patty, how about yourself?
Sure. I think generally speaking, we're very grateful that there are people out there that are charitably inclined. I think the most impactful way to make a gift to any organization is while the donor is alive, to hopefully develop a three-pronged relationship between the donor advisor, and the charitable organization, so that those wishes can be made very well known during the donor's lifetime, so that if any changes or revisions are needed, they can be made. The donor's passions are very well known, and that it is appropriate with the organization's mission. And so if we can encourage and cultivate that three-way relationship during the donor's lifetime, then there's very little need for some of the things that we're discussing here today.
We don't want to cut the lawyers out. The lawyers still need to be
Right,
involved, right?
Exactly.
I'm just kidding, of course. Jenny, Jenny, what do you think? Some final thoughts you want to share with us?
For me, working for a national organization,
Sure.
I think one of the critical points is making sure that you have everything correct in terms of who you're working with and where you would like that gift to go. You want to make sure that you have the proper legal name of the organization, the correct address, the correct tax ID number. Believe it or not, you may run into organizations similar to mine where you have different tax ID numbers for the very same organization, but because of the way that they're structured,
Sure.
you need to know that you are giving to the right area or the right, in our case, in the right territory. So I think it's really important that donors are open to the conversation with the development staff, so that we can ensure that the gift is accurately worded, and that it is going to be used for the purposes for which they intended. So it's definitely a team approach, and we just want not only to make sure it's correct, but to be able to say thank you for your generous support.
Well, those are all very good suggestions. I know from the course of our preparing for this show, I think that's probably the one thing that I drew from all our conversations, is that you feel badly if you don't get a chance to know and thank the person who makes that
Definitely.
gift, because it is a big deal. I mean, as we talked about, someone shows up and all of a sudden you have $1 million gift, you never even knew the person.
Correct.
And you'd like to say something, at least, or otherwise something to their family, and now we have to track them down. So I can see that. But ladies, I want to thank you both for taking the time and coming and talking to the viewers of the Probate Nation. It's a great service to the community, and everyone's going to benefit from that. So thanks again for coming by.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Charitable giving is something that many folks incorporate in their estate documents, or that they undertake while living for any number of reasons. Our guests this evening stress the importance of getting the charity professionals involved early in either the planning that might be done to set up a gifting program, or to alert them to a planned gift on death of your loved one. Working with them allows the charity to accomplish two important objectives. First, to allow the charity to thank your loved one while they are living for their generous support. And second, to make sure that all the necessary documentation is in place and in proper order, so the intended gift will be accepted by the charity. If your loved one has made plans or wishes to make plans to give to a charity, we encourage you to introduce yourselves and your loved one to the development professional at that charity. They are a rich resource of information, both practical and technical, that will serve your loved one well in implementing their charitable intentions. This brings us to the conclusion of our show this evening. Hope you found it informative. And remember that replays of the show can be viewed on the Probate Nation website. On behalf of the Probate Nation, thank you for visiting with us.